We are going to discuss terminating a contract. And there's a few different ways a contract is going to end. It's either going to end by performance, which means that all parties have fulfilled the elements of the contract. Everybody is happy. We're good to close and transfer title from one owner to the other. It can also be terminated by a breach, default, assignment, or novation. So let's hop into performance first. As I said, when the contract is accepted, if everyone abides by all the details of that contract, that's performance. We're good to go. And one key element of that would be a good term for you to know is the term time is of the essence. I've got it here highlighted. Time is of the essence does not mean that everything within the contract must be done ASAP. It means in order to fulfill this contract, there are certain deadlines within the contract that must be adhered to. So once we've got a contract accepted by a buyer and a seller, in the contract, it might say the buyer's got to perform a home inspection within X number of days. A buyer has got to turn in earnest money within X amount of days. The appraisal needs to happen within X amount of days. Clear title, the seller must provide that within X number of days. Final mortgage verification has to happen within X number of days. So there's all these little deadlines. It doesn't mean that we scramble and we do them all at once. It means as long as we're hitting those individual deadlines, we're on track for closing. It also means, and this could be a good element for you to know for the exam, let's say a buyer and a seller agree that the buyer will turn over earnest money within 10 days of an accepted contract. Can the seller demand it on day 5? And the answer is no. They've got until 11:59 of that 10th day before they are out of compliance and there's any sort of partial breach with this contract. Now, let's pop down, though, while we're talking about breach. This is maybe a little out of order on this list here, but that's okay. When someone breaches, there are different types of breaches that can happen. A partial or substantial breach. And really what these two mean is if someone is not completing an element of the contract, let's say that earnest money, for example, we said 10 days, and your buyer mailed that check from out of state and it got lost in the mail and didn't show up until day 12. Did that 2 days there mean the entire contract went bye-bye? No, it was a partial breach or a partial performance, which means that both parties agree to get back on track now that the check has arrived, you're good to move forward. And by the way, if that happens, what you would want to do is document it and have everybody sign off on it so that everyone is on the same page. But it doesn't mean that one little detail kills the whole thing. You can still get back on track. Every once in a while, it's impossible to perform. Maybe the buyer lost their job and no longer qualifies for the mortgage. Maybe the seller has a title issue that is legitimately impossible to clear in order to pass clear title to the next owner. Mutual agreement would be another one, or operation of law. I know that I've had a listing agreement in place before with a seller, and I will admit, all of a sudden she flaked out and went MIA and wouldn't return any of my phone calls. And I actually had just gone to my broker and said, I've got this listing, and even if I got an offer I don't know what I do because I cannot get a hold of the seller. So I was just getting ready to document why we should just remove it as an active listing. And the bank called and said, meet us at the property tomorrow at noon, get your sign and lock box. We're taking it back over foreclosure. So that obviously ended my listing agreement just because of that foreclosure. Let's go back up though. Oh, and here's another one about a breach of contract though, that comes up a lot is, let's say you've got a listing agreement with your seller that they will pay a 7% commission if you bring them a $175,000 cash offer. You bring them that cash offer for 175, they say, nope, I want 180. That is a breach of your listing contract, and they could still owe you, or your broker rather, a commission. Okay. Now let's back up here a little bit and hit a couple more of these terms. A breach of contract, when that does happen, right here, you're either maybe going to be looking at a suit to perform or a suit for damages. A suit for performance is when a buyer sues a seller to perform on the accepted contract. A suit for damages is when a seller sues a buyer for not following through with the agreed contract. Now, this suit for damages, a lot of agents think, well, that means the seller keeps the earnest money for their damages. And it very well may work out that that's how it happens. However, because earnest money is such a small portion of the overall purchase price, I know earnest money is a negotiable amount, by the way, but I see a lot of random numbers that are very low coming in, but I know even some communities have a standard of anywhere between 1% and 3% that you put down as earnest money. That's something you would want to talk to your broker about, what happens in your market. But nonetheless, that's a very small proportion to the overall value of the property. And a suit for damages means the seller could keep earnest money, possibly, and pursue damages above that, and maybe prove that you kept them off the market during the hot spring market, and now that sizzle is over with and the deal is dead, and now they may not be able to get top dollar like they could have before. So that is a suit for damages. Two more terms here is an assignment and a novation. An assignment would be if I wrote an offer, for example, Amy Schaefer and or assigns as a buyer. What this means is I could then assign it to another buyer, and the only thing that would change is the name of the buyer. All the other elements of the contract would remain the same. This sometimes happens in wholesaling with investors that maybe have someone that goes out and seeks out or recruits properties on behalf of them. You probably maybe won't have that happen a lot, but if you were to just Google assignment, I bet that that's the example that would come up. Where I've had it happen is maybe with a buyer that's getting divorced, and we're waiting on that ex-spouse to refinance the house that they currently own and get them off the mortgage so they can get a new mortgage and buy a house. And we're worried that the divorce might not happen and that refinance isn't happening fast enough. So we maybe do Amy Schaefer and or assigns. And then if I'm not able to get pre-approved, maybe my parents would step in and become the new buyers for me. Okay. A novation is unique because all it is an exact rewrite of the contract. Nothing changes, it's just rewritten. Why do you need it to be rewritten? Well, back in the day before scan to PDF and electronic signatures, we used to do a lot of offers by fax. And by the time I wrote up an offer and faxed it to you, you maybe made a change on a counter offer and faxed it back. And then my buyer accepted that and we faxed it back to you. It was a fax of a fax of a fax, which means all the words on it had shifted and gotten all marbly. And the lender takes a look at it and is like, what? What are we agreeing to here? Rewrite it so I can actually read it. And even now that we've got these great e-signature programs like a dot loop or a DocuSign, every once in a while when we maybe take the price and we do a strike through, let's say the price originally was $190, we strike through and the seller counters at 200 and initials it. And then my buyer strikes through that and writes 205 and initials it. And the seller says, yep, I'll do 205 and initials next to the 205. You and I in the deal know what's going on. Everybody knows it's 205. But again, the lender gets it and is like, there's a lot of scratching out and there's a lot of initials randomly. What did you really agree to? Can you rewrite it from scratch? That's a novation. Again, nothing about it changes, including the dates of acceptance. So if we signed that on February 15th, that's when it was fully executed. And that's the date that we're using now to count all of these deadlines with our time is of the essence. The date of the 15th doesn't change because we rewrote it a few days later. Like literally nothing changes. We're just writing a clean copy. So that is termination of contracts. And up next, we'll dive a little bit more into actual real estate contracts for you.